Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the Anywhere Uni live podcast. Tonight we are with Erin. Erin is from Singapore. She lived in different countries. She lived in Singapore, but she also lived in Hong Kong, in Beijing. She studied the British A-levels. She studied psychology, philosophy, and linguistics for A-levels. And she applied in many different countries, and we'll talk about that with her in a minute. She's currently at the University of Toronto. She originally applied for psychology, and then she switched, and now she is studying a double major in drama and linguistics. So, Erin, thank you so much for being with us tonight and for giving us some of your time. So, I was Erin's counselor back in Singapore when I was working there. And I haven't seen Erin since she left and since she graduated the university, the high school. So it's really nice to see her again. Hi, Erin. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, yeah, of course. I'm happy to be here.
All right, this is great. So we're going to talk tonight about being an international student in Canada. We're going to talk about the University of Toronto. We're going to talk about how you decided to apply there. How was the process, the transition? How did you navigate all the majors and minors and the system that's very different from high school when you get to university? How did you choose your major? Life in Toronto, life in Canada in general. So lots of topics to cover together tonight. And we have lots of students interested by Canada. So we know that they're going to be very interested to learn more about Toronto and the University of Toronto and Canada in general. All right. So can we start with the decision making when you were in high school? So I know you applied to different countries. How did you end up choosing Toronto and choosing the University of Toronto?
Yeah, honestly, when I was applying for universities, I was a little bit all over the place. I started out being so 100% sure that I wanted to do psychology. And the second I sent in my uni application, like the UCAS application for the UK,
Regrets.
2 weeks in, I was like, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do psychology. And so that was kind of out of the question. It like got rid of about half the universities I applied to. I also applied to the US because that was kind of like my first choice. I thought could see myself there. But to be completely honest with you, like the biggest component or variable that made me choose U of T was the money. U of T
Yeah.
gave me a pretty sizable scholarship. I get 100K for the 4 years. And so it's like 40K for the first year and then 20. And I've been getting a lot of other scholarships like as a student already, which has been really nice and very generous from the university. Very much appreciated. But that was a really big decision factor for me. Another thing was being able to kind of have the flexibility in choosing my majors when at the university. Again, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I kind of decided on math and drama for a little bit, but I knew that really wasn't for me. I knew I wanted to like switch around and like, do a little bit more exploration. And U of T was really the spot that enabled me to do that. I know a lot of US universities also have that option, but U of T's flexibility was really the biggest component for me too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if I remember correctly, you did not even apply for that massive scholarship.
No, it was like an automatic scholarship. So I think it's called the International Scholars Award. It's
Mhm.
for the St. George campus at U of T, but if I'm remembering correctly, I think Mississauga has one as well. They literally just look at your grades, and based on that, they give you the scholarship. So it was a really nice surprise for me.
And so because we are on our platform, we have lots of students that are in grade 11, grade 10, grade 12, the last 3 years of high school. And, applying to a country so far from home. And I mean, you applied from Singapore, so you can't really be further away than that, right? How long is the flight and what was the thought process thinking you would go that far?
I knew I wanted to get away from home just because I really wanted to do more traveling. I traveled quite a lot in my childhood, moving from country to country, and so I was really ready for something new. That was a big factor, and I had actually never been to Canada or Toronto ever in my
Mhm.
life until I started university.
So your
No,
your
never.
first time in Canada was the first day you arrived to start studying for 4 years at the University of Toronto.
Yep. The very
Wow.
first time I ever got here, I flew on my own. Like my parents weren't with me, and it was a really exciting process for me. I stayed at a hotel for the first 2 days because I was like, I want to explore the city before school starts and before I move in. But yeah, it's a really long flight. There are no direct flights, which is really rough, but
Yeah.
I usually fly like either a stopover at like Dubai or London or Frankfurt. It's like 12 hours plus another 6 or 7 hour flight. So I think my very first like journey to Toronto took a total of 33 hours in total.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
kind of destination where, as an international student, you can be an hour flight away from home and then go back on weekends where you don't feel too good and you're a bit depressed, or your parents can come see you and do a little surprise. When you're that far, it's kind of once a year if you're lucky, and that's the real deal. That's the real move.
No, totally. And sometimes you don't even want to go home because like the flights are just they're expensive and they just take
They're
a lot
so
of energy
expensive.
to like go through. So yeah, I spend a lot of my holidays just back in Toronto, finding work or hanging out with friends. Sometimes I like travel around Canada as well. I've had a lot of trips to Montreal or like to New York. But yeah, it's just a really nice place. There's so many things to do around Toronto and like cities around Toronto too. So it's been pretty nice so far.
So how did you, when you were like, okay, I've never been to Canada. I know UofT is a great school. I'm getting this massive scholarship that I didn't expect. Did you have any friends, family in Toronto? Did you talk to students that were studying there? Like, how did you manage to convince yourself that you could go there, even if you've never been to that country before, and do your entire undergraduate degree in Canada, which is kind of life changing? Um, you know,
Yeah, I mean, part of it is definitely just how I kind of operate and my style. Again, I really like traveling and I really wanted a really big change. I knew absolutely like zero people in Toronto. I have some
wow.
family in LA, but that's on the West Coast, so
That's
it's
far as
still a
well, right? It's
while.
not. It's a 6 hour flight. Yeah.
Exactly. So like really no support system here at all. But I did a lot of research. Like honestly, I went into like a lot of rabbit holes on Reddit and Quora about what Toronto is like and what Canada is like. A lot of research about like the student life aspect of it in U of T.
Mhm.
It's really terrifying when you go on Reddit. I'm not gonna lie, I'm sure a lot of you guys know like U of Tears, that whole image U of T has online, which I can very confidently say now that was not my experience. But yeah, part of it was like just terrifying for me because I had accepted my offer from U of T. It was like immediate and I didn't really think about it. And I only did my research after I accepted it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be so sad. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
You know,
I'm not gonna have friends, but it was great.
it's like when you read the notice for medication and you see all the warnings of what can happen, what can go wrong. If you start by reading that, you just don't take the medication, right? So these,
Mhm.
I think these forums are great because sometimes they give you great insights, but you're also going to have, even if it's a small percentage, you're going to have that 1% of students that are miserable and having a terrible time. They're going to be the ones that are mostly going to want to go on this forum and talk about it and share because it's difficult and they're having a difficult time. And so you're going to see a lot of these. And they sometimes when you read them, you're like, oh my God, this course looks like a nightmare. But I don't know if there is one university on earth where you wouldn't find, tears. Like,
No, exactly. Like
yeah.
it's always just a very small but loud minority. I mean, I'm a tour guide for U of T, and that's something I have to deal with a lot of prospective students asking about this. And I always tell them like most of the time you're not going to write a review unless it was like the most incredible life-changing thing you've ever experienced. But you will write a review if it's like slightly not the best, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. And would you say, I don't know if you've been to the other two campuses, because the University of Toronto has three campuses. There is the downtown central campus, the St. George campus, which is a famous one, but also have one in Mississauga and one in Scarborough. And I know I had students going to these, and the transition wasn't as easy for them sometimes on the
Right.
Mississauga campus, feeling a bit more disconnected to the city. I don't know if you,
Yeah. Like I don't have any classes in the other campuses, but
yeah.
I've been to the Scarborough campus to use their Pan Am Center, just a huge sports center, one of like the best facilities. And I've been to the Mississauga campus once or twice. Again, I don't really have any classes there, and so not too much experience, but I do have some friends there, and it does seem pretty fun. They have
Okay,
various
good.
different like courses and programs as well. So sometimes there are courses or programs that aren't offered at the
Yeah,
downtown campus that you can get elsewhere. So that might be one of the decision factors that you might take into consideration.
yeah, definitely. And so how was the transition to Canada? How when you from the day you landed there, did you have an accommodation secured already that you found before? Was it on campus? Did you have like a freshers week kind of welcome? How did it go? Because you had the real experience. No family, no friends in Canada, first time ever in Canada. So just walk us through that journey of the first few weeks.
It's definitely like a completely different air of energy once you land. Like, um, I didn't know I had to pick up my student visa when I landed at the airport, and so I didn't pick it up.
Oh, so you just
Yeah,
crossed like a tourist.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
I had absolutely no clue. I almost got deported, and thank God for all of the resources at U of T. I got like the Center of International Experience helping me out, making sure my
Oh,
visa was
wow.
okay, and like making sure I could stay in the country, which was a
I
really
mean,
big thing.
that's what happened after a 33-hour flight. You just like you
Yeah,
can't think straight. You're so tired. You just go through go through borders, and if they don't
no,
stop you, you just
exactly.
cross, right?
That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
apparently there were signs all over the place, but I think I was just too
Wow.
deluded in my head that like I didn't notice anything. But that was a big help for sure. And it made me a lot more aware of the student services that are offered at U of T. In terms of like Freshers Week and all, I started U of T in 2021, which is still kind of COVID period.
Yeah.
And so we had a more hybrid type of orientation. Honestly, it was still fun and I met a lot of people and I made a lot of friends, but it wasn't like really up to what people would expect a freshers week to be like. I know that I talked to some older students who have already graduated and went through freshers during like the pre-COVID era, I
Before
guess.
COVID,
And
yeah.
yeah, and it just sounded incredible. I heard about things like them having yacht parties in some of the colleges, some of them having like a petting zoo in their courtyard. So it really varies college to college. Every single college has their own kind of orientation week experience and they do their own thing. Every faculty has their own as well. Some of the clubs also do, like for international students, we have our own orientation, for commuter students as well. But yeah, there are tons of things going on. If I remember correctly, my schedule was just like fully packed during that week. It was like one thing after the other and just activity after activity after activity.
And so how did you connect? How did you make your first friends? Was it and you
Oh,
you can be totally honest, like if sometimes for students it's a 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, a year period where they're not quite feeling settled and they're can be a bit, it's difficult and they haven't found their people yet. And then it clicked and then they have the best time ever. But so what was it like for you? Was it right away kind of fell in love with the city, with the country, with the university, or how did it go?
for me, I got really lucky. It was pretty immediate. The first friend I ever made in Toronto was the girl who sat next to me on my plane.
And she didn't
And
stop you, so she also crossed the border without without her visa.
that's the thing. So she was actually a second year student, and I think she was coming back for
Okay,
school
okay.
again.
She
So
already
she
had a
didn't
visa.
know that it was my first time.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So, oops. But yeah, like it was really easy at U of T. I know another thing, like again, I was so scared of not being able to make friends and like being so freaked out about it. But I feel like everyone going to their first year at university is almost desperate to make friends. Like you could
Yeah.
talk to any random person and they're more than happy to chat back with you and talk about anything and get to know you. So I would meet new friends like in line to get food, or my roommate actually, no, not my roommate, another girl I met who's in my drama class. I met her because I dropped my student ID on the floor and she picked it up for me, and now we're really good friends. Like again, it's just like the weirdest coincidences most of the time. From clubs, there are a ton of stuff. Freshers Week was definitely a big thing. Like I met my roommate on the very first week of school. She wasn't my roommate back then. I didn't have a roommate in my first year, but we met because of like a recognized study group. We were both in this notoriously hard math class that's been going on for forever, but we were both in the study group together and we just clicked. So yeah, I got really lucky in terms of like the people I became friends with and like how quickly I found them.
And would you say they are mostly international students, or is there Canadian students as well? Like, how is the dynamic in UofT?
I have a really broad mix. I think if I remember correctly, like a third of the students at UofT are international, but
Mhm. Which is a lot.
um, yeah, it's a really big chunk.
Mhm.
But I think it's been pretty standard. I meet a lot of people from my residences, and they really try to like mix it up in terms of like who you're rooming next to, like who's living on your floor, who's living in like your section of the building. And so I really met just a ton of people from all over the place, like people who lived in downtown Toronto for their entire life, people who lived in like the
Oh,
suburbs, people from like one of my best friends actually is from Indonesia. And I was like, oh my God, we came from like the same part of the world all the way
neighbors.
over here.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So really just all over the place. I think people are pretty open at UofT. There are always like certain groups or communities that tend to stick together just for like culture's sake, which is understandable. But for the most part, everyone's pretty open and like happy to socialize with everybody.
So Singaporeans, you're all mixing up. Is there other Singaporeans at UofT?
Yeah, that's the thing. So we have like a Malaysian and Singaporean student association.
Okay, so
I
there's a
used to
few
be
then.
part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there totally are. Honestly though, I think I don't have a lot of friends from Singapore now that I think I'm not really thought about that until now. But yeah, not
Which
too
is what
many.
it should be like. You have lots of Singaporean friends at home, and so this is the time to make friends from all over the world, right? So
Exactly.
great.
Time to branch out.
Yep. All right. So one question that students always struggle with when they're considering UFT is the college system. I think it's
Oh,
really unique in Canada. You can find the college systems kind of similar in the UK, in universities like Oxford, Cambridge, Durham. But in Canada, it's not something very common. And so when students have to rank these colleges or choose the college, they're always like, how do I choose? How does it work? What does it change? They're all on the St. George campus, all on the downtown campus. How did you go about choosing? Do you feel like it makes a big difference? Do you actually really have your community within one college? Yeah, just tell us a bit more about that
yeah,
system that could help students understand it better.
sure thing. I can like give the whole tour guide spiel that I give whenever I have
Uh,
to tell
we're
people
lucky
about
that
the
you're a
colleges.
tour guide.
Yeah. So the colleges are specifically for the Faculty of Arts and Sciences. If you're not in arts and science, you don't have to worry about it at all. But I like to think about it as dividing such a huge faculty into smaller subdivisions. So we have like almost 30,000 students in Arts Sci, which is a lot, but we have 7 different colleges to kind of break that apart. The one thing I always really stress to people who take my tours is that they are completely non-academic. So like regardless of what you want to study, what you want to do,
It can be
what
anywhere.
career path you're interested in. Yes, exactly. It can be in whatever college you want. Every college has like a really wide variety of people studying different things. And they kind of offer different student services, but most prominently, they offer residence. And so if you want
Mm.
to live on campus, that's when your college decision might matter a little bit more. If not, it really doesn't matter at all.
Oh,
Again, doesn't
really?
affect your academics. Yeah.
Mm.
So there are like other things that some colleges offer that others don't. So some of them offer things like a writing center or a math learning center that helps out with essay heavy courses or math heavy courses. But to be completely honest, like you can still access all those resources even if you're not from that individual college that offers them. So again, not too big of a component to think about. The other thing that people might want to think about is in terms of like scholarships. So Victoria College, for example, is kind of known for offering a lot of scholarships, and it's one of the reasons why I chose to enter it. They have this thing that it's really great. Again, it's an automatic scholarship, but every year, as long as you're taking a full course load, like as a full-time student, and you get a GPA of 3.5 or above, you just automatically get $1,000 each year,
Why
which
not?
is really nice. Yeah. I know other colleges do that as well. Like some of them offer 800, some of them don't offer it at all, but that might be another thing to look at. But yeah, I chose my college solely based on aesthetics. I didn't know what the colleges were. I Googled all of them and I was like, oh yeah, Victoria College is the prettiest college. I want to live there. I want to live in a
It is
pretty
the prettiest
building.
college, I agree.
Yeah. So that's how I chose mine. Some of them offer like apartment style versus dorm style residences, which
Hmm.
is like another thing you might want to think about. But yeah, I know one of my friends chose their college by looking at like pictures or videos on the college websites of what the bathrooms in the residences look like.
Oh, wow, it's very specific.
Yeah, he just wanted to like live in the cleanest bathroom, the one that looked like the nicest one, and so that's how he chose his college.
Yeah, so I guess you can have your own, build your own criterias and just go for what you want. But they're not the one choosing the students, so it's not harder to get into UofT if you choose a specific college and another.
No, not at all. Like how it works is when you submit your application, you kind of list your top three choices for your colleges. So you'll have your first choice, your second choice, and your third choice, and they'll just put you into one of those. So it really doesn't affect like your application to UofT at all.
Okay, great. All right, that's very helpful. And so another part of the application process that's always a bit confusing for students. Some countries you study psychology and that's it, and you are a psychology student, or you're an economics student, or you're, a specific type of engineering. And UofT, especially when you're part of the Faculty of Art and Science, you apply for psychology, then you switch to what was it, math and drama, and then
drama.
linguistics and drama. So how does it work? Is it confusing when you get there? Do you get support? Is it really that open, or the fact that you chose something when you apply, is it difficult to kind of apply out of that and switch? Can you just explain a bit more to our students how does that work?
Yeah. So when you apply to UofT, you choose, like for arts and science specifically, you choose one of 6 different admissions categories. So these are in things like computer science, humanities, social sciences, Roman commerce, etc. And when you choose those, you're kind of like put into it. Also, I should preface this by saying that like what I'm saying doesn't really apply to Rotman. I like to think of them as their own separate region doing their thing.
So
But
Rotman
you
is
still get some.
the business school, just to
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So you can still have access to like a lot of other courses in art science, and you still do, but they have their own system of working things out, and that's a little bit more structured and rigid as compared to the rest of arts and sciences. But when you enter, you kind of go into one of these admissions categories, and then at the end of your first year and in subsequent years, you choose which programs you want to apply into. And so some of the programs are a little bit more competitive. So they have like what's called limited enrollment. And this means that you might have to have a certain GPA or a certain grade to get into those programs, or you might have to submit like a supplementary application. So like in computer science, I believe you'll have to answer like short little essay questions to get in as well. And they kind of limit however many students can get in. It is like a little bit stressful for comp sci students in first year because they have to meet a certain grade, even though they already got into UofT and got into that program. But they're not like technically in it yet until they've like passed that boundary at the end of their first year. But for me, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, for me, I just got really lucky that a lot of my interests kind of fall into things that are either slightly limited or like open enrollment. And so as long as you're like doing the courses that you need within that program, you're allowed to stay in and pursue those majors or minors. Yes.
Okay, so depending on how popular the major is, then there's more pressure to get in and to be able to stay in that.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
there are some majors that are like slightly more competitive, and they do have like these other requirements put in place. Quite a few of them are open enrollment though, and so as long as you're like doing whatever courses you need, you can stay in.
Okay. So that first year, it's not easy for everyone. I had students at UofT that failed their first year. Would you say, because same thing, it depends on the countries. There's some countries where you get in and, as long as you pass, you kind of know you're going to get through your bachelor degree. There's some countries where they accept everyone, but then the first year, half the students are just kicked out of the program. Where would you say where is UofT and how much pressure do you feel at first year? How much work did you have to put in?
I mean, I think like on that scale, it's probably somewhere closer to the end of like accepting everybody and making it really tough in your first year. But if I'm being completely honest, I don't think second year was any easier than first year.
Okay.
So I don't know about that. It is definitely a tough school, and they do challenge you quite a lot. You have to like really manage your time and figure out what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. if you fail though, you kind of have the chance to retake courses in your second
Okay.
year, and they don't kick you out
They don't
immediately.
kick you out, which they do in like the Netherlands, for example. You're out. It's called the binding study advice, and if you're out, you're out.
Yeah,
So that's good.
exactly.
So
So
they give you second chances in Canada. That's nice.
they do, which is really great. That being said, it is slightly different for some of the other faculties. I know in engineering, they have this thing called like probation.
Mhm.
So if you've like failed your first year, they kind of put you on probation in second year to make sure you're like focusing on your work. And I believe you can stay in probation for 2 years before they kick you out, or two
Wow.
semesters. So they give you like a half second chance.
That's intense. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's what students have to understand is because UofT is, really highly ranked. But when you look at how difficult it is to get in, it's kind of much easier than many other top ranked universities that you would look that would at similar ranking than UofT. But I always tell them, yes, it's not that impossible to get in, but the first year is really difficult, and that you have to make it through the program as well. Like it's not just about getting in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like the thing about first year being tough is definitely a key component when it comes to like getting into your programs or your majors, because that's
Mhm.
when you're applying into them. And so if you don't have the grades, unfortunately, it might be a little bit tougher for you to get into the program that you might want to get into, or it might take you a little bit more time to finish your degree because you can only enter it in your second year or your third year.
Mhm. All right. And so I'm curious to know, because you studied A levels, right? So A levels is 3 subjects only. They are really in depth and it's still a very intense program. But did you get were you eligible for any transfer credits? As my first question, because some students from some programs can get transfer credits, which are university credits that you get in your first year with lighten the load, can also be a bit cheaper than financially because you don't have to take as many credits in your year one. So did you get any transfer credits, and how well did you feel like A levels prepared you for university?
Yeah, in terms of transfer credits, I got a full credit for my philosophy course and a full
Okay,
credit for my psychology course.
nice.
Um, how UofT works though is sometimes they have these transfer credits, and so they count towards like a specific course, but sometimes they don't count towards any specific course. They just count towards something within that program. And
Yeah.
so it's just X'd out. And so neither of my courses counted towards a specific course, which for me didn't really matter anyways because I wasn't pursuing any of those degrees. So it was kind of just there for like my breadth requirements, if anything.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of how they worked for me. I know for IB they accept like HLs for A levels.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure they accept all A levels. Um, and yeah, sorry, what was the second
The second
question?
question was how well did you feel like A levels prepared you? Because when you compare to an IB student that has 6 subjects and an A
Yeah.
level students with 3 subjects, we know A levels prepare very well for very specific subject in the UK. But when you look at other countries, sometimes students are a bit afraid that they're going to be competing afterwards with IB students that had that breadth like much larger than A levels. So how did you how did you feel in the academic transition with from A levels?
Honestly, content wise, A level was really helpful just because of like the depth of content that I
Mhm.
needed and like how deeply I needed to understand it, especially within the subjects that I took. It really pushed my brain to like understand concepts in a lot more depth. And so at the university level, I think it's somewhat similar, especially in first year. It's a little bit of a jump as compared to like what people typically learn in high school, especially in like the Canadian or American system, where they struggled with that jump in terms of like how they needed to use their brain.
Mhm.
But in terms of like the course load and the content load, it was definitely like a struggle for me a little bit, like having to keep things separate in my mind. In first year, I took a lot of courses that were very varied. So I was taking courses in like sociology and philosophy and maths and computer science,
Yeah,
just all over
wow.
the place.
Trying
Yeah,
everything.
exactly.
That's the
Just trying to
magic of
like
North American degrees, right?
exactly. I just wanted to like try different things out and use it as like an explorative year to figure
Hmm.
out what I wanted to do and what I liked. And so having to keep that separate in my head was just a little bit tough. Um, but you get the hang of it pretty quickly. I think by the end of your first semester, it's like a punch to the face, but you're like, oh, okay, that's how it is. And you get the hang of it once you like get through that first semester.
All right,
Yeah.
great. Um, So at UofT, do you have any opportunities for exchange program, for internships? Like how well do you feel like they're preparing you for the next step? Are you already thinking about, doing a master's or the trying to work after your bachelor degree, doing an exchange? Like what kind of opportunities do you see and where do you see yourself there?
Yeah, UofT has so many exchange opportunities, honestly. Like every year, half my friends are going from one country to another, especially during the summer. Like
Yeah.
we have these 1 month long summer exchange programs where you get like a full year's credit in 1 month, which is wild.
Wow, in
Um,
one subject.
exactly, yeah. And
Wow,
just like
really cool.
one course. They do it in like Singapore. One of my friends took a Shakespeare course that was offered at Oxford University through this program. So she got to
Amazing.
be there for a month. Yeah, there's so many opportunities to like study things internationally. They even have like these like international course modules where it's slightly like cheaper in terms of like exchange opportunities. So you're staying in Toronto, studying a course at UofT, but then during reading week for a week, you travel abroad and visit a country that's like relevant to that content. I unfortunately haven't taken part in any of the exchange opportunities just because they don't really apply to my major. You're able to take them as like electives and extra stuff, but in terms of like my majors in drama and linguistics, they don't offer too many abroad opportunities, so I haven't had the chance to take much of them. And in terms of like internships, I've been doing a lot of like part-time jobs and like working around campus and trying to figure out what I enjoy. Right now, higher education is definitely something, or working in higher education is something I'm interested in. Taking
Okay.
higher education, I'm not so sure of. Um, yeah, I don't know if I would do a master's degree, but I am considering a lot of options that kind of merge my two subjects together. So UofT, like as an institution and the things that they offer, haven't really helped me in this sense,
Mhm.
unfortunately. But I think that's just the main, like the type of things that I'm doing, which is understandable. They have given me like a really supportive community to fall back on, though. I know a lot of people who are opening their own production companies in Toronto, like independently, and it's really incredible. And I try to follow along. But yeah, there are lots of chances to like build up and coming things in the city or around the country. Another thing I might be interested in is like computational linguistics, which is like basically like machine learning, a lot of like computer and tech stuff merged with linguistics, which I also don't find very many internships for, but it is something that I've talked to a lot of the professors about. They're all really friendly and they love to talk about like possible pathways, especially when it comes to linguistics, just because
Mhm.
a lot of the times if you bring up linguistics to somebody who doesn't really know much about it, all they say is like, "Oh, you must speak so many languages." And it's like, "Oh, I
Not
guess."
exactly.
Yeah. Not
Yeah.
exactly that I'm learning, but yeah, it's really opened up my eyes. UofT as an institution hasn't given me too much in that sense, like in terms of like job opportunities elsewhere or like outside of like, oh, sorry, when I graduate. But a lot of the people within UofT has given me a lot of insight and a lot of like help in figuring out what I want to do and how to get about and go about doing it.
Yeah, it's a strong community, so it's strong networking and opportunities as well through that community. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because it's really refreshing to see a student that is not studying, computer science or economics or engineering, or because it's sometimes it's scary when you're in high school to think, oh, I'm gonna just study whatever. I'm gonna start uni, see what I like, and pick linguistics and drama, and sometimes it's the parental pressure to feel like, oh, you have to take a degree that's gonna guarantee a job, and if we're investing in you going that far, it's expensive, it's far. We want to make sure that your degree is going to get you a specific career that's kind of, it feels good. And so sometimes students are afraid to pick what they like, just go with the flow. And so what would be your advice for these students that are, I love that, I'm passionate with drama, but no, it's too scary to study that at uni, or I love languages and I would love to learn more and understand them more. And linguistics is something I'm very curious about, but same thing, it's scary. What would be your advice, and how do you see the future for a student that's not studying computer science or economics or
Yeah. I think it's good to just keep an open mind and keep like a very explorative outlook on your life. I was definitely in that same boat. Like, I'm very fortunate to have super supportive parents who are really open to me studying everything. Like I wanted to go to Juilliard and my mom was like, yeah, sure, whatever. And so they're really open to it. They don't mind me doing anything, which is great. And so I don't have that side of pressure, but I
Mhm.
kind of put that pressure on myself to figure out something that's lucrative and something that can actually get me a proper job after graduating. And so I think that it was kind of why I settled for psychology for such a long time.
Yeah.
Even when I was exploring before I came to university, I was thinking of like data science and actuarial studies. And in my head, I was like, there's no way I can do this. I would hate my life so much. Um, and so, like, another big component for why I came to UofT is because you're able to do these double majors or majors and two minors and all of these, like, very multifaceted things at the same
Mhm.
time. Again, I was planning on doing maths and drama, and I do love maths. I'm not going to say that I don't.
Amazing combo, math and drama.
Yeah, that was like my plan originally because I was like, I don't know if I can make money from drama, but I might as well do something in like STEM to keep me a bit grounded and give me an opportunity to find like a regular job.
Mhm.
And so that's where math really came in for me. But like as you can see now, I kind of strayed from that a little bit. And I think like again, keeping an open mind and hearing more about possibilities and opportunities in areas that you wouldn't expect is what really helps me. Like I didn't know what linguistics was at all until the end of my first year when I was choosing. And what made me like really solidify my decision in linguistics was talking to other people who kind of opened up my eyes about like possible other opportunities. Like if you're interested in drama, that's great, but there are so many other things to do other than act within drama. Like I know people who started out as actors and then went on to create production companies or work in like tech or start directing things or playwriting. And so there's so many other like avenues within the majors that maybe they haven't really thought about yet and considered as something that's like a possibility for them that could still make them money and still could be a job for them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it depends also on countries and cultures. And in some countries, it feels like in the job market, if you don't have exactly the right degree, you're not going to access some jobs. And in some other countries, it's not about what you've studied. Maybe it's about where you studied and did you come from a good school where they know that you've been trained well to think critically and to problem solve and to all these kind of soft skills that also are very important. And it's about who you are, right? It's about
Yes.
and actually having a unique degree like linguistic and drama. When you receive a resume and it's for the hundredth time you see the same, business school profile, or you might be like, oh wow, that's interesting, and then you're going to have something different to bring to the table. You're going to have a different perspective that maybe is really unique. So it actually can be something quite positive as well for in the long term for your career.
Yeah, and I mean to add on to that, a lot of companies now, at least like now that I'm on the job hunt for internships in the summer and all, um, I've noticed a lot of jobs don't actually require you to have a specific degree.
Yeah.
Like they're really just looking for somebody who fits the soft skills that they're looking for rather than like a communications degree or like a media degree or something like that.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot more open now for sure.
No, that's great. All right. Um, if let's talk a bit about the application process. Uh, if I interview a student that is in the US, we could spend a lot of time, as you know, talking about the application process in the US because it's very complex. In Canada, it's much more straightforward. What do you remember
Yeah.
for this application process, and any tips for stressed students that would be thinking, oh, I'm going to try to aim at top Canadian universities?
If I remember correctly, UBC had like a much more complex one. You had a lot of like little mini essays to write,
Yeah.
and a lot of them are about soft skills and like extracurriculars you've done. U of T was by far the simplest, most basic application I had to do out of like all the applications I ever did when I was in high
Yeah.
school. Like they just wanted my grade. That's all they wanted from
That's
me.
it. In Canada, it's all
Yeah.
about the grades.
That's the thing. Like I remember being so I was like, oh my God, I've done all these activities. I have so much to talk about now because UofT was one of the last schools I applied to. And then they just asked for my transcript, which I didn't even have to submit. I think you submitted it for me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's it. Okay.
You're
But
in with a
yeah,
big scholarship. That's easy life.
yep.
Canada is
Best
welcoming you.
outcome.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I always tell that to my students is Canada is the kind of country where in the middle of, your last year of high school, you can think, oh, maybe I should apply to Canada. And it's like, okay, that's fine. Let's just take an hour, create your account, upload your transcript, and that's done. When other countries sometimes are much harder to be a plan B or a last minute idea. So yeah, it's just about the grades, getting good grades, mostly in your second last year and last year of high school. So grade 11, grade 12. That's definitely the main advice. Even if I see more and more now, Canadian universities starting to ask for a little video interview for business or little essays, or I know UBC has that personal profile where you have more kind of a US style essays to write as well. So it's coming. But most Canadian universities are still just about the grades. That's true.
Yeah.
All right. Any other advice you would have for your younger self in grade 10, grade 11, for our students on the platform that are in that phase where like, okay, so many countries around the globe, how do I choose? What would be your advice for them?
From my perspective, which is like one that definitely comes from privilege, like if you're lucky enough to be able to like choose wherever you want to go, take advantage of that. Like really explore all your options. Don't think you're like stuck to one thing at any point of time. Like I know when I did A levels, I was like, I can't do anything. I just have these three A levels and now I can't do anything else. But it's just not true. Like there's so many possibilities and like ways to go around things to find avenues to pursue what you enjoy. And so I think keeping an open mind is a really big thing I would push, especially like when I was in year 9 and year 10 and like grade 9 and 10, I guess, where I was just so like focused and dead center in psychology. I think if I had just opened up a little bit more and like tried to explore more things and been more open to more things, I could have probably figured out what I liked a lot earlier than now.
Any regrets?
Honestly, no. I think UofT was the perfect choice for me. Like it wasn't what I expected, especially in high school. I knew I wanted to go to the US. And now that I'm here, like I visit the US a lot and I go on holiday there with my friends a lot, but I just can't see myself anywhere else. Like UofT was truly the perfect choice. Everything I'm studying is the perfect choice. I'm really enjoying everything that I'm doing so much. And so, yeah, it just really worked out for me. I have no regrets from what I did.
And I know Toronto is a very multicultural city, right? And sometimes we hear about horror stories about international students going to the US and experiencing racism because they're international students and they're not really welcome. How was the transition on that in terms of how did you
Ooh,
feel welcomed in Canada, in Toronto? Did you feel any of that? Was it all positive?
I'm not gonna lie. I I always joke about this with my friends because it used to happen a lot to me. I used to just say, like, I just attract racists. Like, I don't know what it is. A lot of my friends who are people of color haven't really had as many experiences as I have. I think I just am a bit too in my head. And so sometimes it's like I look for bad things to come to me a little bit, which is
Really?
unfortunate. But yeah, unfortunately, that's the case. But I haven't had anything that was like too life-threatening or anything. Just like minor like forms of racism on occasion, but it's been getting a lot better now. I think I'm a lot more aware of my surroundings. I
Okay.
think that's just a thing that comes with being in a big city though.
Yeah.
Especially in like such a place that's so multicultural and so diverse. Like just being aware of your surroundings and making sure you know what you're doing and where you're going, keep your head down. Yeah, just don't
Yeah.
invite trouble like me in first year.
Yeah, and I mean, for most students, going to Toronto would feel like, wow, this is so safe, coming from many places. But you're coming from Singapore, which is, I don't know if it's the safest place on earth, but it's definitely the safest place I've ever experienced in my life. So how did that feel, going from the safest city on earth to Toronto, which is supposed to be quite safe, but
It is super safe, like in comparison to a lot of big cities. Singapore was definitely like a big shift into Toronto. Again, I decided to do my research on Reddit, which is not a good idea. And I was like,
ah,
oh no, I can't go to this street at this time. I can't go here. I can't go there. It's totally fine, honestly. Like, again, it's a big city. Things are bound to happen like, on occasion. Like, as long as you're aware of your surroundings, you're pretty safe. Again, like I've had on occasion, like a couple things happen to me here and there, but again, nothing too life-threatening, nothing that's like shaken me too much that I'm too afraid to go out of my house. Thank God, luckily. But yeah, it's just a big city. It's hard to like wrap your head around, but once you're there, you kind of get the hang of it, you feel the groove of it, and
Mhm.
it just becomes like your home. Like I'm really comfortable in Toronto now. I could see myself living here in the future. So
Yeah. So
we'll
do you
see.
see yourself, so you have you're going to have a 3-year visa after your bachelor degree?
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Right
have
now
like
they're
the post-grad
discussing.
work permit.
Hmm.
Possibly. I mean, that's another thing about Canada that was very that attracted me to it quite a bit, like how much they appreciate international students.
Yeah.
They
They
really
want to
want
keep them
people to
in. They need
stay.
people. Mm.
Yeah, so that's something that's been really nice for me, like finding so many opportunities to work, which I know would have been a really hard struggle if I was in the US, especially as a student.
Mhm.
Um, and so yeah, I could totally see myself like living here in the future. I was talking to my boss because as a tour guide, I work under the Office of Student Recruitment. And so
Yep.
they have positions for recruitment officers. And I was like, I might take a peek at that once I graduate.
So how many hours can you actually work as an international student? Can you work anywhere in any kind of business? Does it have to be on campus? And what's the maximum hours you can do?
Yeah, so I can work both off and on campus, which is great. During the school year, like during the academic year, so during September to April, I believe, I can work a total of 20 hours a week. But then
Yeah,
in the summer holidays, I'm able to work full time for up to 40 hours a week.
that's amazing. And I mean, 20 hours a
Yeah.
week is more than enough when you're a student. You're also supposed to study. So that's
Totally.
yeah, not every country allow that, which is a big thing. All right, that's great. Anything else you want to share with us tonight that you think you haven't
Oh,
addressed?
I think that about covers it. Like
Yeah,
UofT has just been a really great opportunity for me and a really nice experience. I have one more year left and I'm gonna really miss it once I graduate, but hopefully I still visit and I explore the campus. It's such a beautiful campus. The people here are amazing and it's a really big school, but if it's like the right fit for you, it's just a great experience. Yeah.
that's amazing. Thank you so much, Erin, for your time. I'm sure lots of students learned a lot tonight and parents and that are considering Canada and UofT. So thank you very much for spending time with us and we'll see you on the next live session.